In episode 13 of Green Pill Weekly, Katie plants edible flowers in a media bed. Kansas garden guy Tracy Lutz reviews his Bootstrap farmer DIY hoop house. And Andy gives advice on setting up your farm's grow systems.
We're in the greenhouse today, and I'm talking about edible flowers. I'm hoping to get some nasturtiums and some violas and pansies established in this media bed. This is leftover from an old system, and we've done cuttings in here, we've done tomatoes in here, and we've done quite a few things that actually had too thick of a root system and too aggressive of a root system that it's been bad for the bed. So we've been talking about getting rid of it. But I think we're going to try some edible flowers this year and see what happens. So first, I'm going to come through and I'm going to plant all the seeds in the media bed with correct spacing. And then I just come through and I water it in. And then I'll need to come back and water several times a day to get those seeds established. And then next, I'm going to go through and I've already pre-planted this 10 by 10 tray of nasturtiums. And I'm going to transplant directly into the beds. So I'm coming at it from two ways to ensure that I have kind of a rolling amount of them, and then also just to make sure I have success. So I got that planted, and I'm actually really glad that I planted them in the 10 by 10s because I was able to get a lot of different starts going in a small space. And truth be told, I'm not sure if my seeds that I planted are even going to really sprout. Maybe if they get pushed way down into the bed, later on they'll sprout, but I wasn't quite as good about my watering after doing that. So now with these new seedlings in, these I will need to water about 3 times a day because all that's there is the hydrogen, and that's going to allow a lot of airflow, which is great, but I just need to make sure to keep it moist. So my hope with this is that I can harvest and sell, the leaves, the nasturtium leaves at market, as well as the flowers. And then I also am hoping that chefs are able to come out and actually harvest when they get their other products from us, such as eggs and strawberries, figs and microgreens. So we're kind of trying to make it kind of an unusual experience, but I think it's part of the appeal. So check back with us, and I should have an update for you soon on how that's going.
Hey guys, my name is Tracy, and I would like to give you my honest review of my DIY Bootstrap Farmer high tunnel kit. Okay guys, as you can see here, I have my high tunnel kit installed. It's been installed for the last 4 months. Let me take a walk around our gate here, and I will show you the inside of it. The reason why we went with a DIY kit was cost. We are a first-time farm. We started our farm last summer, and this year is our first year full-time. So I wanted to make sure I had something that was cost-effective for us, because I was not sure what was going to happen with this past year. So I wanted to make sure we weren't highly invested into something like a permanent structure that we were stuck with, and this kind of fit the bill for us. Let me turn this around. You guys can check it out. Like I said, this is 20 foot wide, 65 foot long, 13 foot tall. It's got doors on both sides. Ease of installation was very, very simple. If you guys can read directions, you can put this kit up. I think a misconception that people have is I don't have a degree. I'm not a nuclear scientist. I can't figure out how to do this. This is very simple. The instructions that come with the kit that you can download from the website are very precise and very accurate and to the point of what you need to do and what steps you need to accomplish to get where you need to get to. We had this tunnel put up in 3 days. Now, you could probably put this kit together in 2 days with 2 people if you worked 6, 7, 8 hours, depending on who you had with you, the time frame that you had, and if there was anything else that you need to get done that day. We spread it over 3 days. I did probably 85% of this kit, 90% of this kit by myself. And I by no means was I running a marathon when I did this. I would work 2 or 3 hours. I'd get a job done. I'd come back the next day and I'd do the same thing. So when we were ready to put the plastic up, I had 4 or 5 of my friends show up, and we put the plastic up in less than 30 minutes. So that's how easy it is to to put up. Me and my wife built these in walls, very simple to put up, not complicated at all. Couple things that I wanted to touch on was the first one is, you are buying these poles yourself. This is a DIY kit, so this is not bent by a machine. I actually hand bent each one of these on the Bootstrap Farmer pipe bender kit. I purchased the pipe bender from them, and then I bent these poles myself. So some of these poles are a little bit bent different than others, and by no means could you tell if you stood back and looked at this kit. You could not tell that it was not bent by a machine unless you knew the ones that were bent kind of funky. I would say that's probably the second hardest thing, is bending these poles. You kind of get a little anxiety because you're thinking, man, I'm bending these poles. If I don't bend them perfect, this high tunnel's not going to last. The wind's going to blow it down. And I'm here to tell you that that's not the way that works. Even if this thing was bent out of whack, these poles, you could bend these poles back to where you need to go. So I would not worry about that or have that in your mind that that these poles are not perfect. If you bought a whole turnkey kit, of course they are perfect because the machine bends those. But you're the machine here, so you're going to have a little bit of alteration. Plus, that's what a DIY kit is. That's why you chose that kit, because you're saving a little bit of money. Two is, we chose this high tunnel kit over a standalone greenhouse kit. For one, I did not want to get stuck with a permanent structure, and for two, ease of accessibility. This kit's 65 foot long. I wish I would have bought a 100-foot kit. So see, if I wanted to add on to this, all I would have to do is just pull the wiggle wire, add more plastic, put more poles, and I could add on to this. That's one thing we did want to do. So if I wanted to add this kit longer, we could do that in the future. The hardest thing about this kit was picking where I was going to put it. Believe it or not, that was the hardest thing for me, was deciding where I was going to put this kit. A couple things you need to think about that I did not think about till after this kit arrived. And then I thought, oh my gosh, what am I going to do about this? One was water. As you can see, I have water inside my high tunnel kit. We actually hand dug the water from where it used to be, and me and my father moved it over here to inside the kit and put a new faucet in, so that way I could have ease of watering in the wintertime and with a frost-free faucet, so that way we did not freeze the water. And two is electricity. And you look at me and you say, well, why would you want electricity in your high tunnel? It's just a high tunnel. You're just growing cabbage and stuff. Why do you need electricity? You need a fan. That's one thing a lot of people don't talk about, is airflow. I have my high tunnel situated so it's north and south, because that's where our wind is. And I live up on a hill a little bit. So I wanted to have the maximum amount of cooling from north to south to cool my crops in here. It does get warm in here. Like I said, we showed the temperature. It's 70 some degrees in here, and it's a 30-degree day outside because the sun is shining. That's why it's hot in here. So I've got these doors open for the last 3 or 4 hours to vent this tunnel, and it's still 70 degrees in here. And that way I could put a fan in the corner here, so when it is a little bit hot, I could turn this fan on and kind of help cool this down in the summertime when I have my cash crops in here, like my tomatoes and my peppers. But that's pretty much it, guys. Not a lot I could say bad about this tunnel. The only thing I can say is I wish I would have made it bigger. As you can see, I've got that seed propagation table. It's 14 foot long here. I've got 5 beds wide, but as you can see, I've kind of cut this down because it was an afterthought. Well, I need some place to put seed trays and some buckets of stuff. So I kind of cut this corner out to do that. Hindsight would have said I would have made a longer tunnel and then did the back of that one. That way I could expand my beds out. And that's something we're probably going to do, is add on to this tunnel this year. But guys, that's my honest review of a high tunnel kit. Just a couple things to think about that I did not think about before I bought this kit, that hopefully maybe you guys can think about this. But anyway, guys, thanks for listening to me, and bye.
Have you ever put a system up in your greenhouse, or maybe planted something in your garden, and several weeks later decided, boy, I should have done this a lot differently? I think we've all done that at some point, whether, big or small situation. I've done some pretty big ones myself. I can remember one time I bought 1,500-gallon stock tanks from a cattle ranch that had changed hands and was no longer going to be a cattle ranch, so they didn't need the stock tanks. I tell you what, it's very difficult to get rid of a lot of stock tanks with holes in them, and it's pretty difficult to chop those up and end up bringing some of those to the dump. A lot of the things that we do in the greenhouse or in the grow room could be done a number of different ways. And the first thing I always like to tell folks is set it up so that you won't make any excuses. Because if you can make an excuse not to do it, you will at some point, and it will become a problem. Some of these things have to do with, the weather, and some of these things have to do with the location. So some of that I'm not going to be able to help you with a whole lot. But some of the things that we're thinking about are going to be the same anywhere that you're growing pretty much anything. Some of the big things that I like to think about initially is irrigation and watering. Is that something that I can get done in a timely fashion and something that I can do without pulling my hair out? If that's something that seems like a doable situation for you and or your employees, and it's something that is cost effective, run with it. Who cares what somebody else down the road is doing? The next thing I'm going to tell you is when I come up with some of these great ideas at 11 o'clock at night and I rush outside and I start slapping things together with reclaimed materials, and I'm not knocking reclaimed materials. Use reclaimed materials whenever you can. What I'm saying is sometimes when you rush into a project, you end up using 3 times the materials you need. You end up wasting a bunch of materials that would have been better suited to a different part of the project or a different project altogether. Or you end up building yourself something that is, like I was saying earlier, going to end up at the landfill. And we would really like to avoid the landfill if we can. Now, with systems and all, the sky is the limit. My only suggestion is draw it up and set that down somewhere, counter in the greenhouse, your kitchen counter, somewhere where you're going to pass by it a lot. Mull it over. Think about things, clogging, cleaning. Cleaning is huge. Can I take it apart and clean it? That's a big one if you're designing any kind of aquaponics or hydroponic system. I don't care what you're doing. Cleaning's a big deal. The next thing is when we're talking a greenhouse or a grow room, maybe we're talking the big picture. Think about your site. Look at it at different times of the year. If you don't have months to look, I do understand. Orient it as best you can based on, the trees and the obstacles in your area. If you have the time, and I highly suggest if you're looking for land or, maybe you have a piece or maybe you just know the area that you're going to end up in. Find those kinds of things out. What's the best orientation? Where's our worst winds coming from? Think of the solstices. That's a really good time of the year this is your coldest and warmest days as far as your solar gain. So figure that out. Find out, in this corner of the greenhouse, our greenhouse right here, I have a cooling pad set up, a swamp cooler. And then in the wintertime, there's no light coming in the south of the greenhouse. So what I have is some benches. I store pots, containers, and things like that. Katie's going to be planting flower seeds down here pretty soon. Spring's coming and the sun's working its way back, and we'll be doing some of those low light things. But, come August time, when the sun's clear over there, it's hotter than heck over here. There's not a whole lot of, the figs love it, but there's not a whole lot of other plants that want to be right here. The other thing to think about is this is a swamp cooler. So it's very humid here compared to the other end of the greenhouse. So it's very dependent. I like to do my tomatoes down here in August when it's real hot and humid. The figs do really well down here in it, but some of my figs that don't like that humidity are clear on the other end of the greenhouse in August. So you have to make some of those compromises. And the only way I would have known that is having a greenhouse here for years. So some of these things you can think of the cooling pad, the sun to the south in the winter. The sun's going to be up here in the north in August. So there's certain things that you can think of ahead for. Now we're going to get to the next deal is I like to test run your system. Be it, your fans. Here we have the cooling pad and the fan. So when it's 95 degrees, what temperature can we obtain? And around here, it's very dry in the summertime. What's the humidity level that we can obtain when it's 95 degrees? Now, obviously, in the wintertime, it's a little easier for us to keep a pretty high humidity level. And honestly, it's more of a battle because most of our trees and things are dormant. So it depends on what your goals are. You can set a greenhouse up for a lot of different things. Ours is set up mostly for winter dormancy. Katie's greens do really well in here, but in the wintertime, there aren't a whole lot of things that are full green. I know other folks, if you're running tomatoes and that's what you're running, you've got to keep it warm. Those minimum temperatures are minimum temperatures. Everybody has their own story and their own style of growing. It's just the matter of finding what's going to work with your style. And then also what you have to be honest with yourself on that. When you're doing a setup, what are you willing to compromise on and what aren't you willing to compromise on? Be honest. If you won't do that, then don't set it up that way. There's so many ways to do things that there is no reason that you have to do it like the guy down the road, or you don't have to do it like me, that's for sure. There's plenty of things that I'm still changing around here year to year. It's a continually changing deal.